and only 4 remain. The dream of African glory is still alive for 4 teams left in the Africa Cup of Nations. For the other 4, we'll see you guys in Pamoja 2027. The last 2 quarterfinals took place and they had the drama, the talking points, and definitely the warning shots of intent to take home at the Africa Cup of Nations. It was absolutely fun to watch across the board. Hi, I'm the Football Otaku, and welcome to today's episode of Total AFCON Daily, your daily wrap of all things Africa Cup of Nations here in Morocco in 2026. If you guys are loving the content, don't forget to like, to share, and subscribe, and all that other amazing stuff. And before we start, I owe you an explanation. Now, there was no Total AFCON Daily yesterday, despite there being action, because there was a small technological problem that I'd encountered while recording yesterday's episode, and unfortunately that meant that I couldn't yesterday's recordings or yesterday's content just couldn't be covered due to this technological issue. I was in the process of making the video and I realized that there had been a problem, and sadly that meant the video sadly had to be scrapped, just couldn't see the light of day. So I really apologize for skipping yesterday's episode. I'm back here today. But I'm going to talk about today's quarterfinals. Unfortunately, I can't talk about yesterday. I'll talk about them more in depth in the semi-finals review, but I've given my small explanation. Now let's get on. Yesterday was history. Now let's get on to today's action, starting with... In terms of the form book, this was the tie of the round. This was the tie of the round in the form book. I mean, both teams, Algeria and Nigeria, walked in 4 wins from 4, looked on form, and were really, really enterprising. You could say more about the Super Eagles rather than the Desert Foxes, but I mean, this was a top tie, and the atmosphere changed it. Proved it. You even look at the atmosphere today, it looked like this game could have been played in Algiers. In the July the 5th in Algiers rather than in Marrakesh. Of course, there are a lot of Algerians in Morocco at the moment, but the match would start pretty even. Both teams would have fair sort of intrusions into the other team's box, but then as the match went on in the first half, Nigeria began to take over. Nigeria started passing the ball around, they started getting their groove going, started looking really slick, and then started dominating with possession, territory, and chances. Lookman had his first sort of sight as a goal, so did Osimhen as well, but then the big chance would fall to Akko Adams in the 26th minute. A phenomenal through ball to find him through a tightly knit Algerian defense. He's in on goal, and then he absolutely skies it. I actually tweeted during the game, and you gotta put those away. You have to put those away. And in games like these, like knockout ties, every chance you get, you have to put them away. I trust me, I learned that the hard way. I'm South African, and really that underlined Nigeria's dominance. They had a lot more of the ball. They were pressing Algeria, making Algeria cough up the ball in very, very dangerous places, and really got Nigeria a lot of joy at the time. And you really feel it was a big problem for the Desert Foxes. They were under a lot of pressure. They were under a lot of under a lot of intimidation, and really Nigeria had them on the jump. They just couldn't land that telling blow of the goal. So we go into the break. It's half time. It's 0-0. And whatever Eric Sekou Shell said to his Super Eagles at half time, whatever it is, it clearly would have stuck, because in the second half the domination continued. Nigeria continued to have more of the ball, continued to pass around Algeria. Algeria still struggled to hold the ball, especially under pressure, and eventually that pressure would tell. Playing down the left flank, a ball would cross in right across the area and would find that man, Big Victor Osimhen. He would head the ball down past Zidane and into the back of the net for 1 1-0 Nigeria, and you couldn't say the Super Eagles didn't deserve it. I mean, they had been by far the better team throughout the match itself, and here they were being rewarded for their hard work, and you really felt it was a massive relief for them, because you really felt like it was going to be one of those days where Nigeria would have a lot of chances, not put them away, and then Algeria would find a lucky goal somewhere and win. So for Nigeria, not only was this a huge goal that they'd got the 1-0 lead in a tie like this, but it also gave them a lot of relief in the context of they'd finally turned their domination into goals, which was something very, very important, something they really had to do, and that really, really gave them a huge sigh of relief. And in the second half, they would also add a second, and you would argue put the tie to bed. Again, slick passing, and one ball from Alexi Iwobi would slice the now Algerian defense open, finds Victor Osimhen in, he squares it for Akko Adams, and I don't know what they were doing in that Super Eagles dressing room at the break, but something tells me Akko Adams was watching his miss on repeat, on loop for 15 minutes straight. He wasn't even listening to the coach probably. He just watched that misplay over and over and over again, because Osimhen plays in Akko Adams, and he sets Zidane down so scrumptiously. I mean, just watch what he does to Lucas Zidane here, and would walk the ball in for 2-0, and really at that point the damn wall had broken. I mean, Algeria had resisted for so long, but at this point the damn wall had broken. It was 2-0, and at this point you didn't know what was the score. At this point, this could get real bad real fast for Algeria, and they were chasing the game badly. I mean, Riyad Mahrez playing in what could have been, or what he has alluded to as his final match, what could have been his final match at the Africa Cup of Nations, really was pretty quiet. Bouneja came on, didn't really have much of an impact. Maza as well, just marked out of the game. And sadly for Riyad Mahrez, his potential Cup of Nations farewell wasn't as glorious as he would have wanted to, as he was sacrificed in the 60th plus minute. Nigeria could have gotten away more goals, but I mean, at that point it was just one-way traffic. And even you could tell the crowd, I mean, the first sort of 20-25 minutes, the crowd was absolutely piping hot. I mean, like I said, you could have played this game, or you'd sworn this game was played in Algiers. I mean, the crowd was pro-Algerian, the whistles every time Nigeria got the ball. But after that second goal went in, the crowd got silent, real fast. I mean, it really was a look of concern, and the crowd, they just took the game out of it. I mean, they had the wind sucked right out of them. Algeria would try end the game strong, but Nigeria had done enough, and really you felt for Algeria. They just didn't have it. They just didn't have anything left in the tank, and the game would eventually peter out, and at full time Nigeria would win and would go through to yet another Cup of Nations semi-final, yet another fantastic performance from the Super Eagles and Eric Sekou Shell's men, who just look like they're getting better and better, and they're winning important games. I mean, this is an AFCON quarterfinal, and they've won it quite comfortably. I mean, they denied Algeria even a shot on target, which is absolutely astounding for a game of this magnitude. I mean, they'd also played Tunisia in the group stage, and remember, for 70 minutes they played the Carthage Eagles off the park. So really for Nigeria, they stamped their authority as arguably the best ball playing team in this tournament, and really they're going to be a huge problem for who they meet in the semi-finals. We'll see. I think you already know, but we'll see. We'll talk about it anyway. Fantastic performance as well for Algeria. Unfortunately, the road ends here. I mean, it was a good tournament, a strong tournament. They weren't their best all the time, but I mean, yeah, they could also cry in the first half. They had a penalty shot, what looked like a legit penalty shot, turned down, but they were just no match for the Super Eagles on their day. They just couldn't match Nigeria, and sadly there was only one deserved winner, and sadly that was the team in green and not the team in white and green. So Nigeria would progress to the last four, and we will know the identity of the last semi-finalists a couple hours later in Agadir. Cup of Nations heritage. It's Cup of Nations heritage. They always seem to do it. So we saw one of the great fixtures, will you will, of the Africa Cup of Nations as Egypt took on defending champions Ivory Coast. Of course, these two have met each other in classic Cup of Nations games: the 2008 semi-finals, the 2006 final, the last 16 in 2021. I think this was their fifth knockout match at the Cup of Nations, and Ivory Coast had failed to win any of them. Egypt have won all five. In fact, a nice little thing, a nugget in the dugouts, coaches MS Fai and Hossam Hassan were on opposite ends on the pitch in the 2006 Cup of Nations. They actually played that match. They played the group game and the final of the 06 Cup of Nations. So it's very interesting to see them now being their national team coaches in the dugout. It was very important in this game to start strong, and that strong start would go to the Pharoahs. A ball lost in the Ivorian midfield, inexcusable to lose possession there so early in the game. Egypt would pounce on it. A through ball played into Oba Mamouche. He would beat Kosonu and then would slot it comfortably past Yaya Fofana to give Egypt the lead in the 4th minute. And first of all, I just want to say it's fantastic work from Mamouche here to beat and bully Kosonu sort of out of his way and to slot the ball past Fofana. You could clearly tell. I mean, I'm going to say the same thing I said about Akko Adams. It's literally the same thing. Omar Mamouche probably on loop after the quarterfinal, probably spent the whole of Tuesday watching his miss against Benin or his fluff against Benin on loop for hours and hours on end, and then spent all of Wednesday trying to improve his one-on-one finishing. And it's so great to see. It's always good to see in football the off-pitch or training work, the work you put in the training pitch being played out on the pitch on game day in game time, and it comes off perfectly. I mean, it's a great thing to see. It's a sport thing in general, but it's a fantastic thing to see. So Egypt land the first blow in this quarter-final, which was very important, and very important to strike that blow early because it means they could play and dictate the game on their terms. And they would strengthen that grip with another goal in the 30th minute. Now, Yasser Ibrahim in the last game got a goal through a header and from a set piece. This time it'd be his partner, Rami Rabia, who would head in from a corner, unmarked for a 2-0 lead, and it really had the game in Egypt's control. 2-0 up in half an hour was really a comfortable position for Egypt to be in. A fantastic header from Rabia as well, and this was yet another set piece goal. I mean, Egypt are pretty good at scoring these set piece goals at the Cup of Nations, which is very important. You know, you kind of need to be able to score goals from set pieces, especially in tournament football. But that really was a huge now problem for Ivory Coast. 2-0 down, and if there were going to be any more goals, they needed the next goal, and they needed it. And I was watching this game by myself, and I was talking to myself during the game. Yes, slight confession, that they needed to score in the next 15 minutes. I said this in the 35th minute. They need to score in the next 15 minutes, whether it's the last 10 minutes of the first half or the first 5 minutes of the second half. They need to score if they have any chance of coming back in this game, and they did. They got a free kick inside, just outside the Egyptian area. The ball was played in. It goes through a sea of bodies, whether it's Amad Diallo or Franck Kessie. It goes through a lot of bodies, but eventually it's bundled in by an Egyptian defender, and it's 2-1, and it's game on, and it's just what the Ivorians needed just before the break. 2-1, and just that glimmer of hope before the break, and a little bit of a grain of doubt in Egyptian minds just before the break. I'd alluded also in the halftime space. Me and my brother John decided to have a short halftime podcast, and I'd mentioned that the second half Egypt sort of had to divide their responsibilities 60-40. 60 to defending, but don't overcommit to defending, because if they overcommitted to defending, now they were going to cede pressure and territory. And for a team as young as this, a team as old as this Egypt team, they couldn't afford to play that way. They couldn't afford to just defend and essentially park the bus, knowing that they were going to cede a lot of pressure, a lot of territory. They were going to cede a lot of the ball, and eventually they're going to crack under the pressure. They couldn't afford to play this way. They have to attack, not just to score more goals, but just to relieve the pressure. And Egypt would do that. The first thing they do would attack, and the first thing they'd do was they'd score. A well-worked move there, right down the flank. I think there was Imam Ashur would have the ball, played across to the box, and it's that man again, the star, the face of the team, Mohamed Salah. He does a great job to get past his defender and would just have a deft finish with the outside of his boot past the goalkeeper for 3-1. He'd been pretty quiet throughout the game, but he just does what great players do, which is, even if they're not having the most influential game, even if they're not really having the best game, they have the ability to dictate terms and the ability to score important goals when they need to, and score important moments when they need to be, and leave their mark on the game, even if they haven't had a great game. I mean, it's what great players do. It's what Mo Salah did here, and it's yet another goal for him at this Cup of Nations. I think now this is his third goal in 5 games. He's really turning up and scoring the more important goals for this Egyptian side. So 3-1 down, and the Ivory Coast had yet again had it all to do. They would bombard the Egyptian penalty area with shots and with balls into the area, all of which were dealt pretty well by Shenawi, but they would pull one back. A ball played into the box would eventually find its way in through Guela Due, defender, who would prod the ball in for 3-2. The Strasbourg man finally finding the back of the net, and it did set up a bit of a grandstand finish. I mean, 10 minutes to play, Ivory Coast had their opportunities, but again, Egypt stood firm as Shenawi stood firm, and eventually the full-time whistle would go, and it would be the record champions knocking out the holders, heading into yet another Cup of Nations semi-final. It was a phenomenal performance from this Egypt team, who look to be getting stronger and stronger as the game goes on. They're peaking as the tournament is going on. Again, still a few, should I say, shortcomings of this Egypt side, but there are shortcomings that they're starting to sort of minimalize. They're shortcomings that they're starting to work on, and they're starting to get stronger and stronger and more confident as the tournament goes on. And it's going to be so interesting now. I mean, they're now going to be guaranteed 2 more games. So it's a great work again from Hossam Hassan again. He was able to stifle this Ivorian attack and eventually see Egypt through to yet another Cup of Nations last 4 appearance. For the defending champions, though, the road ends here. I mean, they'd been so enterprising and so well played throughout this competition, but unfortunately they would fall short. And for Amad Diallo, he was marked out of the game, didn't really have much of an impact, unfortunately, and it would be Egypt who would be heading through again with a compact and a complete performance, a great job up front with their attackers, their defense holding firm, and they would be through to yet another Cup of Nations semi-final. And this is how the last 4 lines up. We have a repeat of the 2021 final as Sadio Mane and Mo Salah yet again step out on opposite ends of the pitch as Senegal take on Egypt. That match is in Tangier, in mini Dakar as we can call it now, Tangier, while in Rabat, the nation's capital, it will be Nigeria, the Super Eagles. They are next to enter the Lions' Den to face the hosts Morocco for a place in the Cup of Nations final. A Morocco team that, for all their shortcomings, are pretty defensively sound. Have only conceded 1 goal all tournament, have not conceded in open play, up against a Nigeria team that have been the top scorers of the Cup of Nations. 14 goals they've scored. It'll be an unstoppable force versus an immovable object. These are 2 games that are going to be absolutely amazing. I mean, the narratives, the lineups, everything. These are just games of history, fantasy, and just enough to get these fans and to get us interested and invested in these games. But enough of that. I'm going to save that for a video of another time. You know which video is coming up. These games will be played on the 14th of July, both on the same day, which is quite interesting. So look out for that, 14th July, semi-final time. And that's it. That is the end of the quarterfinals. 4 wonderful games of football, 4 emotional games of football, and like I said, for 4 teams, the dream of Cup of Nations glory still exists. Well, for the other 4, they'll be on the way home, and we'll be seeing you guys again in 2027, hopefully. What are you guys' opinions? What do you think? How do you think the game's played out? What did your team do right? What did your team do wrong? And also hit me up in the comments. And until then, it's been your boy, the Football Otaku, and never forget, real football always wins. Check you on the flip side. Deuces. Bye bye.